Chapter 211 The Raid. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Max scouted the entire mayor's mansion carefully and realized that there were three glaring security issues that could be exploited. The walls built around the mansion were only 15 feet tall, meaning that while it prevented one from peeking into the mansion needlessly, it was not enough to stop a strong warrior from just leaping across in a jump. To counteract this very problem, the mansion had a runic formation around its walls that raised an alarm when an intruder tried to trespass. But if one could disable the runic formation, it was a cakewalk to enter from an area where there was little to no security and access the mansion. The mansion predominantly had Tier 2 guards with a few Tier 3 specialists inside. However, the mayor himself was a Tier 4 existence, and Max's one day of surveillance was not enough to understand his life patterns and whether or not he would be inside at the time of the intrusion. The second big security flaw was that in his vampire vanity, the ex-mayor had built the mansion with pure polished wood. It was not at all fireproof, and such an environment gave Max a lot of room to commit arson if need be. This could help create the distraction that the group needed to escape. The third biggest security problem was that the mansion was not built in a particularly urban or rich area, as the best area was reserved for the palace where Will Kingsman resided, which left a lot of small alleys and intersections unchecked near the mansion that could help the group with an exit strategy. The clogs in Max's brain began turning quickly as he started formulating a plan of attack. The structure he wanted to access was the library, which was on the second floor, and his best option was to avoid all conflict with the mayor should he be in the house. The job was supposed to be a stealthy one, with the goal not being to rack up casualties but just collect the keys and blueprints to the central prison. In theory, Max needed to do much more surveillance and have a much better plan of action, but to observe the patrol patterns of guards and the mayor's lifestyle would take him a week at least, and it was a week more that Asiva would spend inside prison, and a week more than Max wanted to let her be in there. Hence, having faith in his plan, Max went back to the motel to discuss the finer details of the job with his team. The following night, the group dressed in black hoods, wearing concealer masks, approached the outer walls of the mansion, whereby Max began disabling the runic formation by creating a mana disturbance bomb. A mana disturbance bomb worked exactly how an EMP bomb worked back on Earth to disable electrical grids, except this one was used to disable mana grids. It was taught to him by Kremeth as a means to disable any low-level runic formations that he might encounter in the future. The basic idea was to supercharge a low-grade mana stone with a high-grade mana stone until it explodes and creates a corrosive shockwave that disrupts any formation for a while. The practical skill taught by Kremeth helped Max disable the intruder alert on the particular section of the wall for 15 seconds as the group quickly tried to vault over. Anna had to step once mid-wall, and she propelled herself just enough to catch the top as she jumped clean off after. Sebastian on the other ran at full speed towards Max, who gave him a catapult boost to propel him clean over the wall. The last one to jump over was Max, but with his new and improved Way of the Wind skill he was able to leap straight through and make a soft landing. The moment the trio entered the lawn area, they started to quickly make their way towards the back entrance in the shade of the night, as they saw two Tier 2 guards guarding the door. Swoosh swoosh, 2 arrows laced with high-grade anesthetics were shot into the guards' necks as within 5 seconds they fell asleep and were immobilized. "Nice one, Anna," Sebastian complimented as the two did a small fist bump before splitting ways, as while Max and Anna proceeded to head into the house, Sebastian began climbing towards the roof. To enter the house without making a sound, Max produced an extremely controlled flame as he melted down one glass window without making a noise as him and Anna climbed in through silently. The hallways of the mansion were patrolled by guards, but they had not been alerted about the presence of intruders yet and hence were lax in their vigilance, allowing Max to sneak up behind one and apply a chokehold Batman style so that he could choke the guard out. As Max and Anna made their way to the second floor after avoiding detection by other guards, Sebastian began painting the top of the mayor's mansion with an extremely flammable oil derivative. He was not good with nimble movements and stealth missions, so taking him inside the house was a liability. Instead, Sebastian was responsible for the exit strategy, which was burning the house to the ground. If things were to go wrong, Sebastian would torch the whole damn structure down before making a run for it. His high dexterity stat made the paint job effortless for him, as he smoothly and efficiently painted the top of the mayor's house with the flammable substance while humming the rules of the School of Coward in his head. Luckily, the door to the library room was left unlocked, which helped Anna and Max gain easy entry. However, the difficult part was finding anything useful in the massive mess that was the mayor's library. While documents were scattered everywhere, they were unlabeled and impossible to segregate without going through each and every one. Damn it, this is gonna take too long, Max thought as he began shifting through the heap of blueprints in hopes of finding the one containing the central jail construction documents. It was at this moment that Max heard footsteps approaching the room. As he looked at Anna wide-eyed in slight panic, as there was a good chance that it would be the Tier 4 mayor himself. Chapter 212 He is here. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Max heard the incoming sound of footsteps as he knew he had to do something and fast, so he grabbed Anna's hand and leapt out of the open window, holding onto the ledge with one hand and Anna with the other. The traitor, Graham Rock, the new mayor of Dombivli City, walked into his personal library and clicked his tongue at the mess inside. "TCH, I need to get this organized, it's a horrible mess in here," he said as he took a seat in the middle of lots of papers as he put his reading lamp on the table and began reading the book that he had left half-read yesterday. Max peeked very sneakily into the room to see Graham reading peacefully as he then looked at Anna below, who had one arm to her mouth trying to not make a single sound. The duo were in a tricky position now, since they could neither afford to fall down and make a muffled sound as that would alert Graham, nor stay hanging onto the ledge forever. Having no better options, Max manned up and tightened his grip on the ledge, deciding to stay there hanging for as long as it took. For the first 5 minutes he was fine, but after that Anna was no longer pulling her own weight but rather completely limping onto Max, as Max not only had to hold on to the edge with one hand but pull Anna's weight on the other. After 10 minutes the blood in Max's right arm began to rush down and Max had to use blood manipulation to keep the healthy flow of blood flowing towards his palm. After the 15-minute mark Max began to lose grip, every second felt like an eternity and he started to bite his lips. Finally at the 17th minute, Graham stood up to pick up another book from the shelf as he was done reading the previous one. As with his back turned against Max, Max had the opportunity to use wind palm technique to knock his oil lamp down, causing the documents nearby to catch fire. "Oh, fuck me," Graham said as he tried to create a separation between the book that was on fire and the rest of the library, but when he was busy with the first fire, Max knocked a second lamp down, causing a fast-spreading fire in the other corner of the library. Soon the situation grew out of Graham's control as he rushed out of the library to try and call for some help, as dust and smoke began to flow out of the window that Max was on. When Max was assured that Graham was out of listening distance, he dropped Anna and said, "Burn the ceiling, and run." Anna nodded as while she quickly pulled out a fire arrow and shot it towards the ceiling, Max rushed straight into the burning library and began stuffing everything into his inventory. Max no longer had the luxury to pick up only the documents that he needed as he began stuffing everything that came into his hands into his inventory, while stealing all the keys that were hanging on the wall, not knowing which key did what. The temperature of the flames was high, but with the Agni Astra Max had a very high flame resistance and this magnitude was not enough to damage him at all. After taking everything that he could, Max used the fireball spell to set every piece of furniture and cabinet on fire before leaping out of the library before Graham returned. By the time Graham returned with about 5 guards, not only was the library completely on fire, but so was the rest of his mansion. "This is a planned attack. There must be perpetrators somewhere," Graham shouted when he realized that it was impossible that 2 sections of his house caught fire independently at once, as the house alarms were sounded and all guards began to search for the perpetrators in a frenzy. By the time the alarms were blaring, Max was already long gone as he reached the motel to happily see Sebastian and Anna waiting for him already. "You got the prince?" Anna asked, as Max began to empty his inventory and his keys. As he said, "I hope so." Within seconds the entire room was filled with confidential documents as the group began sifting through the documents, hoping desperately that the ones they wanted were in there. Max realized how close call this mission was once he reached back home, although he had thought of a good exit strategy and the three of them managed to get out unscratched, he needed to plan better on how to avoid Graham from the start. If the Tier 4 warrior had discovered their presence, then it would have become extremely difficult for him and Anna to escape with their lives intact. After a nerve-wracking 15 minutes of sifting through documents, Max finally found the blueprint of the central prison as he had a big smile plastered on his face as he said, "I got it, guys." The group sighed collectively in relief. Although the mission was not perfect, in the end it was a success. A while later, the central prison, Patrol Guard 1. You heard. The mayor's house was torched by some rebels today. Do you think that the resistance is still alive? Patrol Guard 2. Yes, I heard. The entire city saw that fire. It's a slap in the face for the new mayor's reputation. Apparently his entire library was burnt down. Patrol Guard 1. I heard he has put a bounty of 100,000 gold coins on anyone who can provide information on the criminals, but so far there are not many leads. Well, I for one hope they are caught so that we can torture them bastards here. Patrol Guard 2. Well, sooner or later they all get caught, don't they? Ha 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 ha. Severus, who through his superior hearing was listening in on this conversation, had a bright smile plastered to his face. He's here, Severus thought as he mustered the strength in his lungs and shouted to Asiva through the walls, he's here, /////A/N. Bonus chapter for hitting the PS target. Good job everyone. As informed before, I'll be on vacation for the next 4 days. I'll try my best to update at least one big chapter a day, but let's see. Regular updates and bonuses will restart from the 17th ////. Chapter 213, Johnny being a savage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Max studied the blueprints of the central prison seriously and found the concept of going in and freeing Asiva and Severus to be nearly impossible. The central prison was built just 3 kilometers away from the army regiment, meaning any breakout attempt by force could be contained by the military. It was patrolled by Tier 3 and 4 guards and had a Tier 5 jailer present on ground at all times. The holding cells were all built underground in a cold and damp place so that neither natural sunlight nor fresh air ever graced the prisoners. There were 3 underground prison levels with many security features like mithril iron gates and guard quarters. In addition to all these features, the individual gate to each cell was made from 15-inch thick steel and was designed in a way that every opening or closing of the gate made a shitton of noise, which meant that stealth operations were impossible even if one had the key. Basically, the entire mission was close to impossible for Max and his friends, and now all hopes rested on the shoulders of Johnny English. As a Tier 6 god, he could technically walk in and out of that prison unharmed, especially with his ability to turn formless and walk straight through walls. However, with the palace and the army regiment being so close by, should Johnny attempt a forceful breakout, there was a solid chance that things could boil down into a full-blown fight. My head hurts looking at these blueprints. It's impossible for us to bust out Asiva ourselves. We can't take on Tier 4 guards, much less a Tier 5 warden. This is a suicide mission, Anna commented as Max threw her a dirty glare. We have a god with us, don't forget Sir Johnny's prowess, Max said as Anna pursed her lips and remained silent. I will contact Sir Johnny and let him know we are ready for him. With him here we will be able to plan the next part of the operation better, Max said as he walked out of the motel to find some peace and calm as he messaged Sir Johnny over the forum. Max. We are ready for you. Meet us at the Moki Motel. Sir Johnny. Scene. Meanwhile, Johnny English. Johnny had actually arrived in Dombivli City at the same time as Max, as while the kids did their operation, Johnny went on a scouting tour of his own. Unlike Max, who went to a bar to gather information, Johnny, being the experienced veteran that he was, went straight to a brothel. Wasting no time, once he got there he squandered a shitton of money to buy rubbish information about what Will Kingsman liked to eat and what he liked to wear. All in all, Johnny spent an extravagant amount of 1.2 billion gold coins in a single hour on information in a brothel, and he did not even indulge in the most basic carnal pleasures. In his mind, Johnny knew full well that the people he was buying information from were working for Will Kingsman himself, as after his shopping spree he expected to be tailed by a member of the intelligence department for sure. Johnny stayed in the most luxurious hotel, and while he was there, he got a very interesting invitation from none other than Roy Kingsman, the first son of Will Kingsman, to have dinner together. Johnny accepted. As the night that Max and his group were raiding the mayor's house, Johnny had a nice dinner with Roy and Keen Kingsman in the Grand Hotel. At first the dinner was cordial, but the moment the group started eating the appetizers, Roy brought out the agenda of the dinner. "Sir English, we have came to know that you are very interested in our father, having splurged over 1.2 billion gold coins trying to understand his likes and dislikes. May we know why you did so?" Roy asked in a cold voice. Johnny looked at the boy and then at his small balls and smiled as he said, "Why does anyone do anything? Why do monkeys eat lices on each other's backs? Why do fishes live in the water and not swim in the air? Why do all men have dicks but not everyone has balls? Everything is a mystery, young man. So is my interest in your dad," Johnny replied as Roy and Keen Kingsman were left scratching their heads as to what Johnny just spoke. "May I know what organization you are from, Mr. English?" "I don't think I know a merchant as profound as you," Keen Kingsman asked as Johnny shot him a disappointed look. Johnny thought the world would know his face by now, but apparently he had overestimated his own terror. Johnny said, "I'm not a merchant, I'm an assassin, a mercenary, the greatest to have ever lived." "Oh, I see, an assassin," Roy Kingsman said as he pretended to nod before the realization struck him as he shrieked and said, "What? An assassin?" Roy Kingsman was on high alert and his personal guards rushed over to the table hearing his loud voice as Johnny threw 5 daggers from his coat pocket in a millisecond and killed all the approaching guards without blinking an eye. By the time Roy and Keen realized what happened, Johnny had already taken the next bite of his appetizer when the dead bodies of their Tier 4 guards hit the ground at once. The 2 kids looked at Johnny in shock and horror. They had clearly underestimated the man. When the news came that someone had splurged 1.2 billion gold coins in the brothel over information, Roy Kingsman thought it was his chance to rope a big shot in for the country and gain his father's approval, so instead of letting the news pass on to his father he decided to set up a meeting with the man himself. Roy had assumed that since the man had such wealth to splurge and he was living in the most luxurious hotel with no reservations on spending, he must be a wealthy merchant by profession. It was a grave miscalculation on his part as he now looked at Johnny completely stupefied as he asked, "Who the hell are you?" Johnny pulled the seats of the 2 kids closer to where he was sitting as he put his hands over the ball sacks of the 2 kids and said, "The name is English, Johnny English, but for you brats it's Sir Johnny. The first assassination mission I did, I killed a president of a country that knew full well that multiple hitmen were after his life. As a 22-year-old rookie I did a mission that left all the veterans scratching their heads as to how I did it. From then on, bombing oil fields, bankrupting billionaires, killing mafia bosses, this was my routine life until I finally retired as the greatest mercenary of all time. It was then that I joined the elites, looking to game a way into retirement, but rich brats would not leave my kids at the elites guild alone. So I conquered Omega, trained Black Ops officers, killed some more billionaires and became the most wanted man in all of human history. My bounty was $1.2 trillion. $1.2 fucking trillion, more than economies of 100 African nations combined. I honed my arts and learned to bust balls, and in Sigma I became the infamous ball buster," Johnny said as he tightened the grip on the balls of the 2 kids who now looked ashen after listening to Johnny's back story. They knew about the ball buster, the menace in the newly built elite nation, the god that no other god wanted to face. The fear of Johnny made Roy and Keen soil themselves, as piss began dripping down their regal robes, irritating Johnny whose hands became wet as a result. "I don't know what you kids thought when you arranged a meeting with me. Who else in this universe carries the name MR English, huh? You should have gone and checked who the heck it is that has come knocked onto your territory. Checked whether it's a mortal or a god." Crunch crunch. Johnny crunched 1 ball each of the 2 kids who blacked out from the pain, their heads hitting the dinner table spilling food all over. "Fucking babies," Johnny said as he wiped his piss-contaminated hands and put the 2 blacked out kids over his shoulder to take hostage. It was at this moment that Johnny got a message from Max that said they were ready for him at the Moki Motel. "Right on time," Johnny said as he smiled seeing the message. Johnny pulled the tablecloth off the dinner table and wrapped the bodies of the two unconscious boys into it before carrying it over his shoulder on the way to the Moki Motel. /////A/N. Special shout out to Anton_Cartoonin for the super gift. My deepest apologies, but all bonuses will only be given after 17th////. Chapter 214 Not Dead. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Max was stupefied when he saw the unconscious Roy and Keen Kingsman wrapped in a tablecloth. "Come on now boy, restrain them properly," Johnny commanded as Max did his best to apply restraints on the two. "How did you get them?" Sebastian asked curiously. It seemed incomprehensible to him that Johnny had caught the two out of the blue. "So, I realized that breaking into the prison and freeing your friends is too much work, so instead I decided to kidnap his children and propose a hostage swap. His bastards for Max's girlfriend and the other guy," Johnny replied as Sebastian was left mouth agape. In his mind Sebastian believed that Kremeth was the coolest individual to have ever existed, but this image was currently being challenged by the nonchalant Johnny English. "Do you think he will take the bait?" Anna asked as Johnny rubbed his chin and said, "He should, he only has 2 children, his bloodline would be eliminated if he lost both. Although the 2 are dumb, I think they have enough value for a prisoner swap deal." Dovco Max felt a lot relieved hearing this. He was wrecking his brains over how to bust Asiva and Severus out, but Johnny solved the problem of busting into the jail altogether. "How do we approach Will Kingsman about the prisoner swap?" Max asked Sir Johnny, who went into deep contemplation over the issue. After a while Johnny said, "Well, both me and Will Kingsman can't be present for the swap. If we do a swap deal it will take us only a split second to kill you kids after the swap is complete. We need to be smart about it, draft a contract where nobody above Tide 3 can come for the swap. From our side we send Max, from their side they send one guy, and nobody else should be allowed to come within 3 kilometers of the swap area. Once Max gets the swap done, we get out of the planet, regroup and think on how to take revenge on the Kingsman clan. That's the most logical way of saving your friend, other methods will not guarantee her safety." Max thought about this and nodded. What Johnny said made complete sense, hence, Max said, "We should draft this contract and send it with Sebastian to deliver to the palace guards. There is a good chance he will be imprisoned, but with the teleportation stone in his inventory he can come back here safe and sound." Sebastian nodded. One of the key techniques taught to him specifically by Kremeth was the use of the teleportation stone. There were 2 pairs of stone, the locator and the transporter. The locator was where he would teleport to once he used the transporter. It took 5 high-grade mana stones to charge both the transporter and locator to have enough power for 1 teleportation. Although the cost was astronomical, the technique was absolutely worth it for cowardly escapes. Having given the locator stone to Max for safekeeping, Sebastian could teleport back to Max anytime he wished to. This meant that he was the best man for the mission because he was the one prisoner that could not be imprisoned. Johnny drafted the system contract and gave it to Sebastian, who then took off with it towards the palace. Meanwhile, somewhere in the universe, "Where am I?" Rudra wondered as he looked at the unbelievable amount of cosmic energy swirling around his body. Rudra was floating in a vast nothingness with countless strings of cosmic energy converging into his formless body. "What?" Rudra tried to raise his hand, and although he could see the edges of his physical form, there was no matter inside of it. It was like he was made of light, a phenomena that he had never observed before. "What the heck?" Rudra tried to move but could not, as after inspecting himself he realized that only his head had been physically reconstructed while the rest of his body was slowly being re-engineered. "Gaia betrayed me." Rudra remembered the circumstances behind his death and was clear as to what was going on. His godly body was currently under reconstruction by the seed of reincarnation, as while the rest of his body was being constructed by the cosmic strings, the Tier 9 treasure near his kidneys was slowly dissolving into nothingness. At the speed that Rudra's body was being reconstructed, it was going to take him another one. 1.5 years easily until he was whole again. Show system screen. Rudra called for his system screen, but nothing happened. It was like he was no longer connected to the queen. Interesting, Rudra said as he realized that since his initial physical body was destroyed, he no longer had Gaia implanted into his brain, which meant that the queen no longer directly controlled him. Lucifer, that damn bastard, Rudra said as he chuckled at the devil's antics before he killed him as Rudra constricted his formless knuckles and vowed revenge. He was formless at the moment, and was going to stay that way for a long time. However, he knew for sure that the day he came back to the universe, he was going to wreak havoc on a lot of people, the first being the queen. The unnamed god told me that this was my fate long ago, but I never believed in things like fate and destiny. In life I've already had 2 chances. The first time I was a nobody, a bottom feeder, a weakling. The second time I was someone who can slay even the strongest monarchs in the universe in a 1 versus 1 battle while being a tier weaker. A freak unlike any other. The strongest for sure. Now that I've had a 3rd chance, it's time to conquer the entire universe. The queen is corrupt, the dark faction is worthless, and the light faction is in shambles. When I return to the immortal arena the next time, it will be a bloodbath for sure. Rudra solemnly vowed as he began meditating in peace. Without Gaia or connection to the system, he could no longer message his family to let them know that he was okay. Rudra had no idea how much time had passed since he had died, and his heart ached at the thought of him not being able to see his newborn child with Ruby. But there was nothing he could do about it at the moment, and hence he could only bide his time peacefully, hoping that the measures he took before his death would keep his family safe. If there was one silver lining to his absence, it was that Max had matured enough to become the man of the house. Although he was not a complete adult, he had the moral character and the wits to keep the family safe, and this brought a lot of peace to Rudra's heart. Somehow, his little brother was a reincarnator just like himself and was trying to fulfill his destiny in the universe. Rudra did not know exactly who reincarnated Max or what his destiny was, but what he did know was that the day Max unlocked his true potential, he would become unstoppable in the universe. While Rudra had been raised in a rough and tough environment, Max was always sheltered from all sorts of problems and had not seen struggle until much later in life, when their parents died of natural causes when he was 17. With Rudra being the strongest man on earth and an extremely wealthy man, Max was raised in abundance, driving sports cars and accessing the best living facilities, which was good for living a happy life but not to build character. However, with him murdering Sophie and him showing signs of ruthlessness while fighting enemies, Rudra could see that he was slowly trying to strip away his previous sheltered self and become someone truly fearsome. Except his temperament, which was on the softer side, Max had always been a genius. He could grasp theory concepts fast and apply them to a myriad of situations. He was the fastest graduate off the elite academy and had a great physique. Concepts that even Rudra as a god took time to understand were quickly grasped by Max, which was why Rudra knew that his brother was naturally gifted. It was exactly this superior intellect which gave Rudra the confidence that one day Max was going to become a special man. Little did Rudra know that his death was the final straw that broke Max's back, as he had already started to become stone cold. Gone was the trembling teenager, replaced by a stable coward who was ready to do anything and everything to improve and win. Although the road was long, Max was ready to face all adversities head-on. //////n. Yes, the patriarch of the elite clan is not dead. He is alive and awaiting his comeback. /////. Chapter 215, Sebastian the True Coward. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. Will Kingsman bursted out laughing when he read the system contract sent by Johnny through Sebastian, as although he was laughing one could notice the underlying anger as his aura surged. The entire Kingsman court was silent, as while everyone knew that the young princes had to be saved, everyone knew that making the trade was not possible. While nobody cared about handing over Severus St. Maximus, the same could not be said for Asiva Paratus. Although the rest of the vampire clans did not know about this yet, the top courtiers of Will Kingsman knew the true reason behind why the Kingsman clan attacked the land of Lord Cole Paradis. It was not because they could bear the losses and do as they pleased with a weaker clan, but because they had been explicitly informed to do so by Marcus Aurelius, the 16-year-old son of vampire king Regus Aurelius, who had his eyes set on conquering Asiva. While Regus Aurelius was a noble ruler who did not indulge or support his son's debauchery, not many vampire lords had the guts to refuse his advances for their women or daughters. However, Cole Paradis was one such lord who, when approached by Marcus regarding the matter of spending a night with his then 15-year-old daughter, rejected the notion outright, giving no face to the vampire prince. Marcus had laid eyes on Asiva at the grand gala, and something about her crimson eyes made his blood boil in excitement whenever he looked into them, as her boyish charms and fiery temperament ignited a flame of lust in the young man. However, after the fall of the Paradis clan, Asiva managed to escape while the assassins sent to wipe her memories clean and bring her back as a slave were defeated, as she got shelter within the Maximus clan and was out of bounds for a while. Fate convicted her as a criminal who tried to overthrow the Kingsman clan, and she was captured by Will Kingsman as a bargain chip to get benefits from the young prince in return for Asiva's body. The young prince visited Asiva in prison, but despite being chained and defenseless, her spirit remained intact as she spat in Marcus Aurelius's face and refused his sweet offers of pardoning her crimes if she willingly had sex with him. Marcus was extremely angered and disappointed in Asiva's attitude. Over his lifetime he had taken many women, old, young, even small children. However, none had shown the kind of distaste that Asiva had shown towards him. He was handsome, charming, powerful, and with status. He was the dream guy of many women, and breeding with him was a glorious chance for clans to strengthen their bloodline with the powers of the Aurelius clan. And while this temptation was enough for 99% women to succumb to his will, Asiva was different. There had often been women who said no to his face, but meaning yes internally, as they got the satisfaction of playing the victim, but Asiva was not one of those people as well. When she said fuck off, it meant that she had no interest in the young vampire prince, and no interest at all. Marcus hated conquering women by force, and he really wanted to conquer Asiva, so to convince her he even went to the lengths of drafting a system contract that promised that Asiva would become his first wife when he turned of age, and by extension the vampire princess if she submitted to him, but Asiva still denied the offer. It was at this point that the thoughts of raping the naked chained Asiva entered Marcus's mind, but eventually he decided that as a noble-born prince he was above this level of scum. Every woman he had ever had was through consent of the clan patriarch or her man himself, and he had never forced himself on anyone, even though he liked to flex his status to compel the other party into making a decision. Deciding that time would break her willpower, he ordered Will Kingsman to torture her without scratching her body and using psychological tactics to break her confidence. The deal was for Will Kingsman to break Asiva mentally in the next 2 years and make her submit to Marcus Aurelius in return for a Tier 8 treasure that would take the Kingsman clan's offensive abilities through the roof. But now that deal was in jeopardy, as his idiot sons were kidnapped by a god, and as a father it was his duty to save them. Why did I raise such useless brats? It must be their mother's genes. I always knew deep down I should have chosen a smarter woman as my wife, but I went for the one with bigger boobs. Will Kingsman complained as he angrily glared at Sebastian. You, dwarf. Snap snap, Will Kingsman said as he snapped his fingers and made Sebastian kneel by suppressing him with his aura. You know where they are hiding, give up their location and I will reward you handsomely, Will Kingsman said as all eyes in the court now turned to Sebastian. Sebastian was internally repulsed by his low-life treatment, and if he wanted to he could lash back at the courtiers by making a snarky comment, but the Turtle Hermit rule number 6 said that an angry coward was a dead coward, hence Sebastian controlled his anger and took a deep breath before beginning his performance. Snivel snivel, my lords, Tidut the dwarf was abducted by evil men and forced to do this task under duress. I know nothing, I see nothing. I was happily skipping through the streets trying to buy a nice red apple to reward myself after a hard day's work at the smithy, but they snatched my apple and pulled me up by my beard and beat the shit out of me. Crying intensifies. I am just a little cowardly dwarf, I can't fight 7 feet tall men, please save me. Sebastian said as he forced his eyes to produce fake tears. The pressure on was instinctively reduced by Will Kingsman, who felt a little bad for the dwarf. Apparently the dwarf was a victim as well of the evil men who had abducted his children and did not deserve the harsh treatment he was prepared to give him. If there was one thing about men, they had an inherent superiority complex over other men who cried and showed weakness. It made them lower their guard against the weak creature, thinking that a creature who is so down and below can never possibly muster the courage to strike back at them. This was a trick taught to Sebastian by Kremeth to exploit his status as a dwarf to the fullest. This is a headache. We cannot hand over a Siva Paradis, but we cannot let my son stay in the hands of the maniac as well. This system contract was crafted by a true master. It doesn't allow us to play dirty tricks to kill the enemy and seize a Siva back once the transfer is complete, and that is a problem. Will Kingsman said as Sebastian carefully held his breath, realizing that Sir Johnny was much smarter than he showed and that his wisdom and reading of the situation was actually spot on. Sire, I know they are your children, but handing over the girl is against national interest. We need to find some other way, a courtier said as murmurs began all around the courtroom as people silently supported the notion. Judging the situation, Sebastian knew he had to sway the public opinion before it ever formed, so he said, the tier 6G. God, oh my Thoro Dinson, I can't, Sebastian said as he pretended to tremble and disturbed as he tried to utter the next words, as instantly the room was silenced and everyone was focused on him. Speak freely, dwarf, no harm shall come to you in this courtroom, Will Kingsman said with confidence as he tried to give courage to the scared little man. Pretending to struggle, Sebastian said, the god who captured your children, J. Johnny English, he said that you must know of his nickname, the Ball Buster. Snivel * gasping for air *h. That he said that he had already busted one of your each children's balls and that should you reject the contract it would be the end of the Kingsman line. Listening to this, Will Kingsman erupted in rage as he screamed, that mother **************. His voice made the pillars of the room tremble as each one of his courtiers were shook to their core, not having the spine to utter one more word. Threatening a man's bloodline was the ultimate threat to his existence, and Will Kingsman was not willing to take it lying down. With a little push from Sebastian, his mind had been made up about saving his children, as dumb as they may be, in the end they were his own flesh and blood. /////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////// those goals again for a terrific release rate once more //////. Chapter 216 The Terms of Release. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Will Kingsman thought long and hard as to how to tackle this situation, and after a round of private discussions with his closest counselors he had an answer ready for Sebastian. My lord, but do you think the sniveling dwarf will have the courage to complete the task? The courtier asked, as Will Kingsman stroked his chin in contemplation. You, crying man-child dwarf, for 10,000 gold coins, will you do one job for me? Will said as he pointed at Sebastian. Sebastian pointed a finger at his own face and made a blank expression as he innocently asked, me. Sire, this dumb 4-feet coward is not fit for this job, the courtier interjected, but at this moment Sebastian said, For the honorable lord of the Kingsman clan I will do anything. Will Kingsman beamed at this line as he felt his position in life validated by this statement. Nodding amusedly he said, Good, brave dwarf, take this counteroffer from my side and begin roaming the streets of my country freely. Sooner or later they will come find you and you can relay my information back to them at that moment. The offer they made of handing over the criminals with only one Tier 3 enforcer present is not fair, because after we release criminal Asiva Paredes and her accomplice Severus St. Maximus, we will be having their representative and Asiva as opponents plus one Tier 4, opponent in Severus St. Maximus taking on just 2 Tier 2 bratty kids of mine and a Tier 3 enforcer. That won't do, we would be severely overpowered and the life of my kids will be in danger. So you take the counteroffer that says, we send 1 Tier 4 enforcer and 1 Tier 3 enforcer, while the hostage side can send 1 Tier 3 enforcer and 1 Tier 2 enforcer to the exchange. This way power on both sides will be balanced and there will be no trickery involved. Sebastian's pupils constricted sharply when he heard this proposal, but he managed to keep a straight face. The enemy had played a big brain move. Severus and Esiva were most likely in bad shape and by no means ready for combat. If their group accepted this proposal, it would mean that there would be high chances of a confrontation breaking out that could see the party being wiped out. Tell them clearly that these will be the only terms under which we will negotiate a hostage transfer, otherwise they can forget about it. They can kill my children and I will mourn their deaths by destroying everything Johnny English holds dear. Will Kingsman said as he handed Sebastian a system contract. Sebastian accepted the contract, bowed politely and walked out of the palace with dignity as he felt that he was being trailed by 7 assassins in secret. When Will Kingsman was sure that Sebastian was out of eavesdropping range, he asked his subordinate to deliver a letter from him to Marcus Aurelius, that someone was eyeing his woman. In the letter he made it clear that his hand was forced to make the transfer, but while he would try his best to recapture Esiva, Marcus Aurelius was free to make his own arrangements as well. After exiting the palace, Sebastian pretended to roam the streets aimlessly, before entering a dark alley and activating the return stone and disappearing into a spatial tear as the people trailing him were left scratching their heads as to when and where he went. Back at the motel, Johnny read the system contract carefully and then listened to Sebastian's tale as he stroked his eyebrows and hummed deeply from his throat. Well played, Johnny said as he looked towards Max and Anna, thinking whether or not the duo was up to the task or not. The mission was undoubtedly dangerous if the kids accepted it, but it was also the fastest way out for the prisoners. Hence letting Max make the choice, he said, "This choice is for you to make, Max. If you think you can handle a tough fight, accept the system contract. It's the most hassle-free way of saving your friends. You are at the absolute peak of Tier 2 with strength comparable with a middle-stage Tier 3 warrior, while Anna is Tier 3, the two of you together can go save your friends. But there will be a risk of death on the mission. If you want to take a safer route, I'm sure I can break in and out of the prison, but it will take us at least 1.2 more weeks to figure out how to do it." "What will the choice be?" Johnny asked Max, who fell into contemplation. There was not much choice for him here. He had to save Esiva as fast as possible, which is why he decided to accept the system contract but carefully prepared for the fight ahead. "Sir Johnny, do we still have my brother's frost bombs in the guild inventory?" Max asked Johnny, whose eyes sparkled at the question. Just like Augustus one night, Shikuni was also an explosion artist with many unique bombs to his name. "We have a few," Johnny replied as Max grinned and said, "Then accept the contract. I'll need to borrow 5 of them." Johnny accepted the system contract and simultaneously put out a guild mission to come deliver him 5 frost bombs in Dombivli City, in the True Elites Guild chat. The time for the meet had been set in the desolate forests outside Dombivli City in 24 hours, while the bombs were expected to arrive in 16. In these 16 hours, Max and Anna began planning extensively as to how to tackle any situation that may arise as they prepared a stock of high-grade mana potions, health potions and stamina potions to help recover Esiva and Severus upon reunion. "Just wait a few more hours, Siv, we are coming to save you," Max whispered as he balled his fists with conviction. However, unknown to him, a certain prince of the vampire clan was also balling his fists in anger. Chapter 217 Nearly Free. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Marcus Aurelius's POV, "Who the fuck is messing with me right now? Johnny fucking English who? My father is a monarch, put some respect to the Aurelius name, dammit." Marcus said in distress as he knocked aside an extremely expensive vase in frustration. Marcus had not been able to get Esiva off his mind ever since he saw her beautiful naked body that would not submit to him. Whatever woman Marcus wanted, he had always gotten, as he was mostly only attracted to women of stature within vampire clans. There was something about having his way with a dignified wife or an innocent young flower that nobody else could achieve, but he could. Although he promised to impregnate the woman and help strengthen their clan, he knew his own limits very well and that his father would obliterate him should he have bastards running around, hence he made sure that he never impregnated any women he slept with. Whether the women liked him or not, in the end they all tried their best to please him. However, Esiva did not, and this burnt an intense desire for Marcus to conquer her. Although Marcus himself was only Tier 3 at the moment, his right-hand man and best friend Siegfried was at the peak of Tier 4. Siegfried, I don't trust Will Kingsman's arrangements to safeguard my interests. I want that woman Siegfried, don't let her escape, don't hand her back to the Kingsman either, bring her to me please, Marcus Commander Siegfried, who politely bowed and said, young master, your wish is my command. Tapping on Siegfried's shoulder with a smile, Marcus said, you are the only person I can rely on, take care of yourself and don't disappoint me. I won't disappoint you, Siegfried said with conviction as he took his leave. Meanwhile Asiva was by no means alright. She had her hands tied above her head for over 200 days now and she could no longer feel them at all. Around day 30 the ticklish feeling of not enough blood reaching her fingers stopped completely, as after that she could no longer feel her fingers, while after day 60 she could no longer feel her arms at all. Her right shoulder had popped off its socket and had stayed in an awkward position for a long time now as Asiva had grown numb to the constant pain. Her body was covered in bruises and black marks made by busted blood vessels where clots had formed. Her face no longer had her usual radiant luster as she was covered in dirt, grime and sweat. She had grown extremely frail and weak to the point she could no longer shake her head to get the fleas off her skin as she just let them do as they pleased. But although her body was at her limits, her spirit still remained strong as her eyes never lost their luster, as if they were holding on to something tangible, something that would not allow Asiva to die without achieving. L.RG. Her only comfort every day was the shouting noise of Severus that let her know that he was right there beside her and that they would make it through together. To be fair, this was the first time she had ever cultivated respect and admiration for Severus, as that man lived up to his duty as a godfather this time. But her spirit and strength truly emboldened only after she heard Severus say that Max was coming to save her. For the last 2.5 years every time she closed her eyes she had thought of that man, and the separation had made her heart grow fonder of him as she realized just how much he meant to her life. She had long gathered the courage to confess her love to him, as she knew in her mind that he was the only man she would ever want. Today, as she was biding her time as usual, her cell door rattled earlier than the usual time for food, and this alerted Asiva as something was definitely up. 2 guards walked in without any plates of food as they scanned her body with both lust and disgust as they said, "You are coming with us." The chains binding her arms were removed for the first time in a long time as she landed flat on her feet and stumbled onto the floor. Asiva felt a throbbing pain in her right shoulder and her arms as the blood vessels that had not been used in ages felt fresh blood coursing through them again as Asiva saw the dead flesh on her arms and realized just how bad her state truly was. For a moment she could not gather enough strength to walk properly as her steps were wobbly, but after managing to stand straight she looked at the guards and said in a demanding voice, "Give me something to cover up first." The guards begrudgingly agreed and threw her a shawl as Asiva wrapped the cloth around herself and followed the guards to see what was up. The moment she exited her cell, she felt an incredible amount of dopamine release as she felt like a truly free bird. Her happiness was doubled when she saw Severus out of his cell too, grinning and shedding a tear of joy upon seeing Asiva. "You look awful," Asiva said, her voice cracking a little as Severus wiped the tear off his face and said, "So do you." The two of them were allowed to take a hot shower and given a fresh set of clothes and a better meal than usual, as while Asiva and Severus kept asking why they were being given such a treatment nobody replied. Just when the two began feeling better after having a hot meal for the first time in several months, they got a system notification that poured cold water over their happiness. System notification. You have been poisoned by the mana-devouring poison. You cannot circulate mana for the next 24 hours until the poison is cleared from your body or you will die. Despicable, Severus said as he slammed the hot bowl of food in his hands and felt foolish for trusting the establishment that had captured them. It was at this moment that 2 men walked into their dining hall and sat across the duo. One of them was a Tier 4 vampire commander covered in tattoos and piercings, while the other was an average-looking lanky human at Tier 3. The lanky human said, "Your friends have taken the Kingsman heirs as hostage. For the lives of Roy and Keen Kingsman we will swap the 2 of you. The poison is to make sure you can no longer circulate mana and attack us back after the swap is done." As we don't want any tricks to be played. Come with us obediently, enjoy your freedom and fuck off, understand? Try to act extra smart and we kill you here and now. Asiva narrowed her eyes at the duo. She could feel their murderous aura even this second but knew that there was nothing she could do about it at the moment. Although she knew that they were walking into a trap, for now she could only hope for the best and have faith in Max to save her. /////A/N. This bonus chapter is sponsored by Anton_Cartoonin. Please thank him in the comments for this one /////. Chapter 218 Reunion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When the Kingsman brothers finally got their consciousness back, they were shocked to see their old schoolmates around them as they identified Anna and Sebastian alongside the unmistakable masked dude Raven. MMMMMMMPH. Roy desperately tried to say something but because of the dirty socks stuffed in his mouth he could only produce muffled sounds. Keen Kingsman on the other hand just glared at Anna with blatant disgust as if trying to communicate that they would pay for these acts sooner or later. Anna did not give him much attention though as after restraining him thoroughly and completely she slapped Keen Kingsman on the bum hard and told Max, "All yours." Max approached the restrained Kingsman brothers with cold eyes as for a moment the duo thought that he had some bad intentions towards their bodies, however, Max only gently picked them both over his shoulders and nothing more. Dovko Anna and Max then took the two prisoners and began moving towards the designated spot of meeting where they were supposed to trade them for Asiva and Severus. "All the best guys, come back with the full gang," Sebastian said as he wished them goodbye while Sir Johnny just nodded in acknowledgement. A few hours later, at the designated meeting spot, in a desolate forest outside Dombivli city, "It's almost time," Anna said as she stomped hard on Roy Kingsman's chest for continuously making muffled noises that could attract a wild beast attack. Max felt his heartbeat increase rapidly as his eyes were thirsty to catch a glimpse of Asiva after all this long time, however, there were still a few minutes left until her arrival. "Is your dragon trustworthy?" Max whispered into Anna's ears as he did not want the Kingsman idiots to hear his conversation. Anna nodded silently as Max hoped that her analysis was not wrong, as a large part of their countermeasure depended on the strength of their dragons. After making a lot of mistakes in the past regarding the planning stage where Max planned from the best scenario to the worst, adding a backup layer for every plan that failed, Max decided to change the planning approach to the worst scenario first to the best scenario. Here Max assumed that he would always face the enemy with the worst odds possible with everything that could go wrong already having went wrong, and then make his way towards better and better circumstances. Picking up this sort of approach, Max felt much more prepared for any unexpected situations. For today, Max assumed that Asiva and Severus would not be in any sort of fighting shape at all, coming at the minimal 1 HP bar and could die with a slight blow of the wind. His plan was to neutralize the two Kingsman idiots and their two guards without considering the participation of Asiva and Severus. The way he was going to achieve this plan was through Anna's pet dragon and through his brother's frost bombs as well as some hidden traps. After reaching tier 3 as an archer, Anna could now set traps and create automatic arrow shooting mechanisms with which she had rigged the battlefield. Should a fight break out, these hidden cards would help neutralize the threat of the enemy. Asiva's POV, Asiva refused to walk like a weakling while she was going to reunite with Max. Although her legs threatened to go limp after an hour of walking because her stamina bar was already in the red after not having properly drunk any blood in months, she still pushed through her boundaries and tried to walk as straight as she could because she did not want Max to see her pitiful state upon reunion. "We are almost there," Severus whispered to Asiva as with his superior hearing he could already start picking up Max and Anna's voices coming from a few hundred meters away. Asiva felt her heartbeat increase rapidly as she bit her lips and steeled her resolve, walking with dignity although she was chained, trying to muster the brightest smile she could to show Max when they reunited. When her eyes finally laid on Max standing 100 meters away, the first thing that happened was their eyes met and although only a glance was exchanged, it conveyed every emotion possible. Words that were meant to be said and words that were meant to remain unsaid were all spoken within one instance as one small tear escaped Asiva's eye. Her lips began to quiver, as she managed a silly smile, but with the tear in her eye and the redness of her nose Max knew that Asiva was trying her best to show her best self, but was much more miserable inside. A murderous aura erupted around Max. As the winds in the forest began roaring at a dangerous speed, Max felt like rushing over to his Asiva right this second and tearing the two men holding her captive apart, but her controlled his emotions as he glared straight into the eyes of the Tier 4 vampire covered in tattoos. The Tier 4 vampire, who was 2 inches taller than Max and equally muscular, looked at the masked man who was glaring at him and felt chills go down his spine. Although logically he knew that according to the system contract if the archer was the Tier 3 representative then the masked man could only be a Tier 2 warrior, however, the threat he felt from the Tier 2 warrior was unreal as he subconsciously took a step backwards. When the two groups were separated by only 50 meters, Anna picked up her bow and shot 3 arrows that landed 5 meters ahead of the enemy as she said, "Don't come any further." The enemy was faster, while she and Max needed the extra buffer if the Tier 4 tattooed vampire suddenly decided to come at them with an attack. "Only the hostages walk now," Anna said as the human enforcer on Asiva's side pushed both her and Severus on the shoulder, indicating that they should start walking while Max did the same to the Kingsman brothers, who had to hop like kangaroos to get back to their camp because both their legs and their hands were tied up. As Severus and Asiva walked towards Max and Anna used 2 arrows to break the metal chains binding them, freeing their arms. Although her right shoulder hurt like hell, Asiva still did her best to raise it to a height as tears rolled down her cheek as she came closer and closer to Max for a hug. When the last few meters were left, Max decided to fuck it as he rushed towards her and wrapped her in his arms in a tight hug as their hearts rapidly beat against each other's chests. It was one of the most surreal moments of Max's life as he felt so distressed yet so complete in this 1 second as if he had been reunited with his other half. On the other hand, all of her wounds, all of her pain and suffering for the last few months seemed to be dissolved to nothing as she held Max in her embrace, feeling his scaly skin and his warm breath as for the first time since she was captured she felt like everything was gonna be okay. Chapter 219 Trap. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "You're hurt," Max said as he felt Asiva's right popped-out shoulder and her severely damaged arms. He could feel how her ribs had softened because her body had begun dissolving her bones due to lack of food nutritional sources and how much fat she had lost. But Asiva did not reply to Max's concerns but instead just hugged him tighter as if letting him know that everything else was a concern for later. Max did not feel like letting go of Asiva at all if he could. He wanted this moment to last forever, however, time was not their best friend at the moment. The hopping Kingsman brothers were almost nearing their enforcers, and once they did cross over and were freed then it would be considered as a transaction completed. "Here, a health potion, stamina potion and some blood, heal up fast," Max said as he hurriedly gave the items off his inventory to Asiva. Asiva's eyes turned sharp when she saw the items as she said, "Do you have some mana poison antidote too?" Max panicked a little as he felt his heart drop 10 feet. The bastards had poisoned Asiva and Severus, they had played their hand really well. By poisoning them with a mana poison, they were ensuring that the two could not circulate mana or fight back if a fight broke out. "Damn it, I don't have mana poisoning antidote," Max thought as he shook his head in dismay at Asiva, who gave him a reassured smile and said, "Don't worry, even without it I'm not useless, I'm going to drink the high-grade health potion, help me pop my right shoulder back in place." Max nodded as the moment Asiva downed her potion, Max ruthlessly took her shoulder and popped it back into the socket. Asiva muffled a scream as she closed her mouth tight, breathing heavily from her nostrils before gasping for air. The high-grade HP potion helped quickly heal her injuries like cuts and bruises while Asiva felt a warm burning sensation in her right shoulder and arms as the damaged parts began mending. Bravely after drinking the HP potion she drank the stamina potion before beginning to devour the big bag of blood as she felt some small form of strength return to her body after spending months in a weakened debuff state. On the other hand, Severus also began healing at a visible rate as the sweeper who was in a much better physical condition than Asiva looked almost combat ready. "Let's slowly disengage." Max told the group as they began to cautiously retreat, maintaining eye contact with the enemy who were freeing their young masters from their bindings. They had only retreated some few tens of meters when they felt the system contract restrictions lifted from their soul upon a completed transaction, as the Tier 4 vampire grinned evilly at this moment and said, "Thank you for handing over the young masters. But you four ain't going nowhere." Max sighed in exasperation. It was always like this in the end, there was never a free meal, betrayals were scattered everywhere. But this time, Max was prepared for it. "Guys, run!" Max commanded, as upon his command Anna made sure to drag Severus and Asiva to safety as Max stood behind and faced the four enemies alone. "These guys busted one of our balls. They are too cruel, Nimly the Cruel. As your young master I command you to torture them all before killing them," Roy Kingsman said as he pointed viciously at Max. "Shut up, kid, I only listen to your father, not you. It's gonna be a long time before you get to command me and my respect," Nimly the tattooed vampire said as he patted Roy on the head, undermining his authority blatantly. Roy was irked, but there was nothing he could do about it. The other party was too strong and he needed his protection for now, notwithstanding the fact that they were not inside the palace and in open grounds where his title as the young master of the planet was only a paper deterrence. Nimly brought out a long spear from his inventory as he looked skeptically at Max, trying to understand why of all the fighters on the enemy side why the weakest one had chosen to stay behind. "Well, since you have chosen to sacrifice yourself first, so be it," Nimly said as he and his human partner, the Tier 3 sword warrior Vari, charged at Max. Max was prepared for this as the moment the distance between them was under 50 meters, Max activated his now immensely powerful spell, Flame Wall. The Flame Wall was an inherent spell in the Agni Astra. However, after Max began wielding mana its power was increased by an incredible 1000%, which made it a Tier 3 spell by power alone. The hot flame wall blocked the charge of the two men momentarily, but Nimly slashed through it with his spear after about 2 seconds of delay, only to be shocked to see that Max was no longer present on his spot on the other side. "A mage, but where has the brat gone?" Vari the human swordsman asked as he tried to scan the surroundings only for the scan to not pick up on anything. The second Max activated the flame wall, he also activated the Way of the Wind and sprinted at extreme speeds diagonally into the woods, where Anna had already set up the traps and the blood bags which had been punctured. "There," Nimly said as he picked up on Max's movements and sprinted after him into the woods and straight into the trap area set for him and his mate. What Max was luring Nimly into was a battlefield where he was immortal. Anna had already punctured about 2,000 liters worth of blood bags in the area and it was currently drowned in blood, while her dragon was currently setting the treetops on fire from above so that the enemy be completely cornered into a flaming bloody mess with Max as their enemy. Max licked his lips in anticipation as he saw the two men charging headfirst into his trap. Let alone a Tier 4 and a Tier 3 warrior, in his current setting 10 Tier 4 warriors would find it hard to take him down. // bonus chapter for hitting the GT target, good job everyone. / Chapter 220 Max's improvements. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wait, why are we not backing Max up? Asiva asked in a concerned voice as Anna kept dragging her and Severus through the woods. It's because he can handle it on his own, Anna said with a smile on her face. Are you sure? It's a Tier 4 warrior and a Tier 3 warrior attacking him, Severus counter-questioned, but Anna shrugged her shoulders and said, well, to be honest, I think he'll be just alright. Asiva widened her eyes in disbelief. The last she saw Max he was a capable warrior, but their combat strength was not that far apart. However, now it seemed like he had strided far ahead of her. Still have your dragon with you? Anna asked Asiva, who nodded in acknowledgement. Is it strong enough to fly you both out? Anna asked again, to which Asiva shook her head in denial. No, he is only Tier 2 yet, can't fly very well himself, let alone fly us out, Asiva said as Anna clicked her tongue. Well, then I guess the only option for us is to keep running, Anna said as she increased her pace of maneuvering through the woods. Meanwhile Vari and Nimly, what in the fiery bloody hell is this? Vari asked Nimli in a puzzled voice. They were chasing Max, however. When they came near his approximate location they saw many trees from which bottles of blood were hanging and had been punctured by arrows, while a dragon was apparently burning the treetops from above. Well, if there are arrows lodged into the tree trunks it means that the elf archer and the others must have passed through here before the vampire. We are on the right track, Nimli replied calmly as his footsteps made a splattering sound as he walked on a thin layer of blood. Suddenly two fireballs came towards the duo from behind a tree as they immediately tried to jump aside, only to be shocked to see that their legs had been held firmly into the ground by what appeared to be shackles originating from the blood underneath. 9000.15000 Nimli got a lower damage because he was a tier stronger than Vari, but both men were still stunned by what was going on. The enemy has got some tricks up his sleeve. Be careful, Nimli said as he began rotating his spear at a fast speed before using the attack, spear slash. His attack chopped down all the trees in a 30 meters distance as Max was revealed hiding behind one particularly wide one. There you are, Nimli said as he slammed his spear onto the bloody chains holding him to the ground, breaking them with sheer strength. Seizing the opening, Vari unleashed the sword technique, Leaf Blade Hurricane, as he sent hundreds of slashes towards Max. Firewall. Max used Firewall to block all incoming attacks, and then used the cover of the wall to shoot a barrage of fireballs in a projectile over the wall towards the rough location of the enemy. After freeing himself, Nimli helped free Vari as the two rolled away from Max's incoming barrage with both of them flanking Max from opposite directions, trying to bypass the wall and create an opening for attack. It was a good plan, and they believed that it was going to be successful too, as without Max having clear vision of their movements he would not be able to have an accurate reading of their attacks. However, unfortunately for them, Max had already anticipated this maneuver. Shua, the two of them tripped the trap set up by Anna before the fight as a barrage of arrows were shot in their direction. Spear block. Nimli began rotating his spear at an incredible pace to block all incoming arrows. However, Vari was not able to do the same and was shot at 6 different body parts. 4.000.3, critical hit. Vari's health dropped down to a critical red as his neck was punctured with an arrow. Vari immediately tried to open a bottle of health potion and use it to recover his lost HP, however, Max used blood manipulation, and created a blood blade to bust the bottle in his hands before he could drink it. Help! Vari yelped in a weak voice as he removed the arrow lodged in his neck, and understanding the urgency of the situation Nimli charged towards Max to keep him occupied and to create enough time for Vari to heal up. Putting his full strength behind his spear, Nimli went for a full-powered swing at Max, thinking that his tier 4 strength would be enough to sweep Max clean off his feet. However, Max planted his feet at shoulder width, and just like how he had blocked the force of incoming boulders with just a stick, he calmly blocked Nimli's spear swing with his bare hands. What? Nimli was horrified. This was not possible unless someone had mastered the skill block, however, who in their right minds would master such a skill? Fireblast. At point-blank range Max used Fireblast, sending Nimli flying about 15 feet back as the tier 4 warrior lost 17,000 health points. Fireball, 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 summon nether beasts. Immediately after blasting Nimli away, Max returned his attention to the struggling human warrior Vari as he used Fireball to blast away the second health potion that Vari tried to drink while forcing him to dodge the other two. Max summoned his nether beasts the second he saw Nimli getting back to his feet, as he trusted the tier 2 hounds enough to know that the 15 of them would be enough to deplete the red HP bar of the injured Vari. Kill him, Max commanded as his hounds pounced on Vari like a pack of hungry wolves, backing the tier 3 swordsman into a tight corner. How dare you toy with me? Nimli roared in anger as he charged at Max with renewed passion, knowing full well that if he did not end the fight with Max quickly his partner would most likely die.